Good morning, you guys. Spring has definitely sprung here in my New Jersey Zone 6B garden. I'm going to take you through a bunch of the garden, show you what's blooming. We'll talk about some spring bulb flowering care. I've got a den of foxes living under our cottage. If you hear any banging, we're doing some construction in the backyard. It's been a little challenging to film lately, but there's so much to see here. I've got a bunch of tulips blooming now. Some of the daffodils are wrapping up, but there's still just so much left to see. Are you ready to get your bloom on? Let's grow. So I always like to start my garden tours here in the welcome garden because it is one of the very first gardens you see when you pull up and drive to my home, and obviously when you walk up to the front door. So let's just start and appreciate the view. That right there is my all-time favorite view. It's just gorgeous in spring, summer, and especially in fall when you see just the brilliant fall color. I actually have two porches. We have one main porch where we hang outside, and that's kind of like a hang area for us. And then we have the porch where we typically enter our home. I usually pot up two urns here that I have some round obelisks in. I planted them up with sweet alyssum and pansies, and then I added some pretty spring wreath that I bought from Birch Lane on Wayfair, and really, it's really pretty. It'll last me probably into the summer. Maybe I'll leave it up all season long. I don't know. We'll see how it looks once I pot up my planters, but I really like how it looks right now. I've got some vinca still blooming. These yellow daffodils are essentially done. They're kind of wrapping things up. I've got black-eyed Susans coming up. We've got ajuga getting ready to bloom. This right here is a buckeye tree. Interesting story. When we bought this house, my daughter was in her, I think she just wrapped up her first year at Ohio State, and I just thought it was the coolest thing that we had a buckeye tree here. It blooms, it attracts a lot of hummingbirds. Really great tree, and you can see it's got a little bird's nest in it right now. So I've got this really pretty planter here potted up with some sweet alyssum and some pansies. I love the smell of sweet alyssum. It's so pretty this time of year, and it can last the whole entire season, like into fall. So I'll probably wind up pulling these pansies, and I actually bought a rose that I'm gonna put in its place and probably plant around it with some other annual. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I know I want to put a rose in there this year. And then as we walk up to the welcome garden, you can just see I've got lots of daffodils. They're quite beautiful. They just started blooming. I've got a bunch of different daffodils all along here. Some tulips that are just coming up and starting to bloom. Really, really pretty. It really, really feels like spring here now. And I really planted this whole area up with a bunch of different varieties. As you can see, I have some Globemaster alliums planted along, and I actually planted a whole section going along here. But it seems like I'm missing one that I planted here, one that I planted here. And that's pretty sad because I love those alliums, and to not see them come up is kind of disappointing. But anyway, moving on. We've got a whole border of pansies in here. Some I planted in the fall, others I planted in the spring. I did have the whole border planted up originally in last year, and since my petunias, my super petunias from Proven Winners were doing so good, I didn't want to pull them. So where you see heavier blooms are the new flowers that I just planted, and the ones with a little bit less, those are still bouncing back from last year. But look at that view. Isn't that wonderful? I love that there's different layers of gardens. I mean, you've got this layer here, I've got another layer at the base of the wall, and then I've got the layer along the driveway. And let me tell you something, if you have ever thought about planting your daffodils en masse, do it. Do it, do it, do it. You will love it, no regrets. Now, one question that I get asked a lot is, what do you do with all of that foliage as it dies back and it doesn't look good? And I gotta tell you, I gotta leave it alone. You gotta leave your bulb foliage alone. So it's important to plant around it. So what I usually try to do, I try to plant annuals or other perennials to kind of disguise the foliage while it dies back, because let's face it, it's not pretty when it dies back, but it's really important that you leave it alone until it browns out, because it's storing its energy for blooms for next year. So yes, that will all look unsightly at some point, but I do have a bunch of perennials and annuals mixed in here, and I will be tucking in my seed starts. I love to plant zinnias along the wall here. It always looks so pretty, and I get a lot of pollinators, a lot of butterflies and hummingbirds and stuff. So I will be tucking those in as well. And honestly, as the season goes on, you really don't even notice that foliage as much. And I wait until it's really bothering me. Like I try to let it go for as long as it possibly can, try to let it go as brown as it can before I cut it back. So we have that garden area down there. I've talked with you guys about it before, but you can see that tree stump down there in the middle. There was an old tree there, and when we moved in and spent our first season here, it was essentially dead, and we were concerned that it was going to fall on the house, so we wound up taking it down. It was not healthy at all. And so just in that whole area there was pachysandra and vinca, poison ivy, and it was just a hot mess. We just cleaned it out this year, and it is planted up with roses, hydrangeas. I've got some hardy hibiscus, some peonies. I want to add some smoke trees. I just planted some raspberries down there. We've got some ornamental grasses. I've got some perennials. It's going to come together. It's going to take some time, but it's going to come together. I do want to add some sort of weeping tree in front of that tree stump. There was a tree there, and I forget what happened to it. I think like it broke in a storm or something, and it just didn't look the same, so we just totally took it out. It wasn't worth saving. Now last week, my porch was in a little bit of disarray because we were repairing the columns, and I was still trying to put things back together. I'm preparing to plant it, but this has actually been the location where I've been hardening off seedlings lately, because I usually do it in the backyard in the Zen garden, but we've got some repairs going on back there on a balcony on the back of our house, and so we've been in a little bit of disarray back there too, so I haven't had a place to really harden my plants off, so I've been doing them out here on the front porch. So anyway, to make a short story long, I have not planted this yet, but it's coming soon, and this is actually going to be where a bunch of my houseplants are going to go. It worked out really well last year. The plants loved it. It does get a little bit sunny, but I just keep them up right along the house, and they get plenty of light. They love the New Jersey humidity, and the leaves don't scorch because they're not in direct sunlight. And now that we wrapped up the welcome garden, there is something really special I want to show you guys. I don't want to alarm them, but here in the cottage garden, we've got a family of foxes. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see them. Isn't that precious? I love that they're not only living under the cottage, they have a safe haven there, but they also like frolic around in the flowers. It's really beautiful. I love it. I wanted to take you guys over there to show you what's blooming, but I don't want to get too close to them. So just to give you a little idea, we do have some hyacinths, we've got some daffodils, and I planted the hyacinths, daffodils, and some alliums last year. Those white daffodils were there, and I definitely want to add more because I feel like there isn't as much. So this year, I wrote it down on my planner, I wrote it down on my garden planner, that I need to fill this part of the garden with those white daffodils because it looks so pretty. I really like the way the white sets off of the cottage with the greens. All right, so we don't disturb the family of foxes. We're gonna tour some other gardens. So this area was all packed with pachysandra, and I hated it. I mean, I hated it with this particular sculpture. It was just not attractive. So we just took it out this year. I've got some peonies planted all around it. I've got some sedum autumn joy that I dug up and divided. Some nepeta, dug up, divided that too. And then I bought these snapdragons to go outside the cottage where the foxes are, but because I've got a family of foxes and I don't want to disturb them, I can't plant them there. So instead, I planted them here. We're going to be mulching soon, so hopefully this will look a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. I do want to add some seed starts here. I'm thinking about adding my snapdragons and zinnias. I'm not sure which varieties yet. I'll kind of cross that bridge when I get to it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing so that this garden looks full this year. And then in the fall, I definitely want to plant it up with daffodils, maybe some tulips, and a border of hyacinths. And now that we're looking at the front wall of my house, so I actually planted this border of daffodils when we first moved in, and I didn't know if anything was even planted here. I bought those for my old house. We suddenly decided to move in October. I already had my bulb order, and actually it had already arrived when we put a bid on this house and got the house, and we moved in December. And so we mad dashed got them in the ground, got them in as far as here, and because of these shrubs didn't plant any along there, and I still haven't planted that up. So note to self, and adding this also in my garden planner, that I need to get a mixed bag of daffodils to put there to sort of finish out the look here. Now, one of the other things that I did have planted in here when we moved in were like those peony looking tulips. They really did not return. They are really not long-term kind of flowers. I mean, they're so beautiful during the season, but I have to say, after I planted them and I shared them the first season, a couple people mentioned, hey, these don't come back really well. And you know what? I have to say that I agree with that statement. A couple of the other plants that are in here, I've got some viburnums, some 9-bark, a bunch of hydrangeas, and these knockout roses here that I actually planted. I had knockout roses at my former home and I just loved them. And so when we moved in here, I knew that there were some empty spaces, and so I planted some. So we're gonna move from this end of the garden down to the potager and cut flower garden. Daffodils are still growing strong. I love them. I cut them, bring them inside. They're amazing. A little tip though about daffodils, especially if you want to mix them with other cut flowers, they do emit a toxin in the sap of their flowers. So you want to make sure you condition them for at least like a day in their own like vase of water before you mix them with other blooms. Really, really beautiful. We have mostly white here, some yellow. I wish I could tell you what variety they are. I didn't plant them, so I don't know. But seriously, plant daffodils en masse. It is beyond gorgeous every season. I love it. This makes me so happy at the start of spring every single year. As we walk over to the potager and the cut flower garden, I do want to take a second to appreciate the beauty of this spirea. It's baby's breath. Gorgeous. I love the beautiful blooms on it. I do need to do a little bit of pruning on it. I can see that some of it didn't green up and flower, but I mean, look at the architecture on it. It's so gorgeous in the spring. I have one in the back. I have another one over on this side of the bed, and it's just so gorgeous. Highly recommend. Now, this garden last year, as I mentioned in last week's video, was half planted with pachysandra. This whole bed actually had pachysandra that I had started removing. And last year, fall of 2023, I had planted up the whole bed with tulips. They didn't all come back. This year, instead of doing the whole bed with tulips, I wound up adding hyacinths because I love the aroma. They look so pretty. And I did pink impression tulips going all the way around. I think next year, and again, I'm gonna put this in my garden planner, I want to tulips all the way down to my bearded irises and still do the border of hyacinths along here. I love hyacinths. And here's a little tip about hyacinths too. I didn't really plant them in my former garden. I don't know why. But I really started planting them here, and here's a little tip for you. When you start handling the bulbs, be really careful and make sure you're wearing gloves. All I was doing was moving bags around that I had unpacked, and I touched my neck and I like broke out in a rash immediately. And I had to just like stop what I was doing, run upstairs, quickly scrub off in a cold shower, wash whatever oil and stuff was on my hands off. And since that time, I will not handle any bulbs, especially hyacinths, without wearing gloves. And again, I wasn't even planting them. I was just moving the bags around to organize them. after I got my order in. So just a little tip, make sure you wear garden gloves. But anyway, getting back to the tour, isn't that so pretty? I love the way the sunlight is hitting the blooms. The baby's breath spirea is just gorgeous. And you know what? Since we got rid of that pachysandra, I can really appreciate the tree sculptures that much more. Now, the cool thing about this one, it is a chain and it like stops up top, and then there's this anchor at the bottom. And the cool thing about this is I think this is a tree from somewhere else on the property, and they moved it here way before we moved in. They moved it here and they've got it on some sort of serious rebar, and then they added it with, and then they took the little anchor sculpture off. Okay, had to take a momentary break because the landscapers were here mowing the lawn. Everything looks great. I actually had to have a conversation with them because I didn't want them to disturb the little baby foxes over there that were playing, and the mom was laying outside, and I just kind of wanted them to be aware before they started mowing and scaring her and the pups. But anyway, let's go through the potager. So this is partly my kitchen garden where I grow my herbs and vegetables, but I also grow my cut flower garden in a few of the beds and around the fence in the garden. So much is happening in here. I've started planting some seedlings like my snapdragons and sweet peas, and I have a bunch of winter sown vegetables in here as well. I do still have some sweet peas coming up in these little containers here, so I'm just leaving them to see what pops up. But you can see I've already started taking some of my snapdragons from here and doing a little planting. So it is planting season, and this is the most wonderful time of the year. So let's start with this one raised bed. So when I started planting my winter sown seedlings, I started it in this bed, and I decided to go with a more dense planting, a little bit more of a design, if you will, so I could fit more in. And it's really starting to fill in. So I've got some carrots in here. I've got some scallions, some chives, and I've got some strawberries that, quite honestly, I've kind of been debating about taking out. I had like a section of the bed in here with strawberries, but they just never really did well. And every time I'd get a strawberry, the chipmunk would eat it. And I'm just kind of like thinking to myself, what is the point? Why am I even bothering? So I may scrap them altogether. But anyway, I've got some dill in here. I did have a scarlet runner bean here, but it actually did not survive the cool temps, so I'm gonna have to pull that out. I'm probably gonna wind up putting a tomato in here and a tomato in the other end where I have a similar pattern. The dill won't really go too long into summer anyway, so I'll probably replant that, but at least I can get my tomato starts in there. So I'm just gonna kind of like forget the beans. I'm just gonna go right to tomatoes in like a week or so because we're at that point. So I do have some spinach. I've got some arugula in here. I've got some cilantro. I love cilantro. And one of the funniest stories about cilantro is way back in the day, I used to think that I could not grow it because I would always buy it every spring, and then by summer it would bolt, and like I couldn't understand why. And I finally figured out many years into my gardening life that it likes cooler temps. And so now that I know that, I try to grow it in the spring and in the fall and have a much better experience growing cilantro. So we're like besties now. I do have some Swiss chard in here too that I started from seed using the winter sowing method. It's coming in and doing well. I've not ever grown Swiss chard before, so if you have any great recipes that I can use for that, like, can you drop me one in the comment below, or just give me a comment and tell me what you like to make with it. I've got some broccoli, I've got kale in here. When I planted up this bed with my seed starts, it looked really boring, and I knew it was going to kind of look like this for a while. So when I was at the nursery and saw a bunch of these beautiful flowers at the farm at Green Village, I was like, I need to buy them, and I am so glad I did. Look at those ranunculus. They're gorgeous, and the stalk, that purple stalk, is just stunning. Looks so good, looks so pretty. I'm so happy I put this in here. Every time I come out here, it just really makes me smile. So it's just gorgeous, and it's a great cool season flower. I do have some pansies in here too. This is marjoram that came back. I'm gonna have to trim it back because it's getting a little bit taller than the rest of my flowers. Maybe I'll put it in a dish. Do you guys have a good recipe for marjoram? I bought it because I've not grown marjoram before, and so I've been growing it, but I've never really cooked with it. So I think I grow it more just to grow it. I don't know, do you guys do that too? I do that a lot. I grow vegetables just because I want to grow it and not necessarily because I want to eat it. So anyway, moving on down the bed, I've got some nemesia in here too. Looks like it's getting ready to flower again. I've got, what other seed starts do I have in here? I have some status in here that I winter sowed, and I know I've got some snapdragons in here as well. And that's about it, but you can see like this spinach I had from last year. I had it last year. This is one of the only ones that survived. So actually I should probably cut some and eat it. But then I've got more here, and I've got romaine lettuce. So really, I'm just really happy with how this bed has been growing and coming along. And I feel like I've done so much more with it. Like this kind of has been somewhat of a dead bed for me. I know that kind of sounds a little bit funny, but even though I've planted it, I just haven't really thought much about the aesthetics of it. And it's kind of been bothering me because every time I would walk down into the potager, like to the left just never really looked good. And this year I'm making it my mission for it to be functional, growing vegetables and herbs, but beautiful. I mentioned last week that I've got some garlic growing on in here. That still seems to be doing pretty well. I've got my tulips already started blooming here. They're pink impressions. I did plant more pansies along this border. I was actually going to plant some of those over there, but because the foxes are there playing and living and having fun, I just decided to put them in here. Just this week, I planted more sweet peas along the fence. They popped up in my little containers. I winter sowed all of them, and so I just got them planted in the ground. I did use Costamane's flower fertilizer. I haven't used it before. I'm trying it this year. It's organic, and I figured it was going to be safe to use in the bed with my food because I don't want to use anything synthetic in here. I want to use everything organic. So much like my roses, I use an organic rose fertilizer. For that one, I use a Spoma rose tone, and I try to keep everything in this garden very, very organic because we're eating the food and I don't want to have, you know, synthetic materials in my food. So then over in here, I do have foxgloves that I started from seed. I just planted them. They're looking like they need a little bit of water, but I planted a couple more over here. And then over in this section, I'm gonna kind of keep open along the back of the fence for my zinnias and probably my cosmos once they're ready to go in the ground. Now you might be wondering what that cement spot is with the bolts. So this whole area was formerly used as a basketball court. So that actually had a basketball hoop. We do need to remove those bolts, and I do want to put a statue here this year. I don't know what kind of statue yet, but I want to put a statue here. I already have a fountain in this garden, so I don't need another one, but I do want something kind of tall. Do you guys have any suggestions? Anything you think would look good here? I'm really not sure what I want to get yet, but I know I'll probably find something Mother's Day. I'm definitely going to be going with the family, statue shopping. We did that last year. It was so much fun. I want to do it again, and I want to find something specific for this spot. Also in this garden, getting ready to bloom, are my Globe Master alliums. I did a border going around the whole garden. I cannot wait for them to come up. They may not have all come up in the welcome garden, but they are all coming up here, and I could not be more excited because they're one of my favorite spring flowers. A new addition for this garden this year is this self-watering window box. I did buy it from Amazon. I'm sure you can find similar, but what I loved about it was the wicker on it. I just thought it kind of went well with my chairs. It is self-watering, which is going to be really helpful because I've tried different planters on this table and they always dry out. It's a lot to keep watered. I can't really run like a drip line here because then it would be on the driveway where people walk. We'd have to run it through the table, yada, yada. I just don't want to get involved with doing all that. So that really never worked out. Last year I did a lot of cut flowers on here, and that was really beautiful, but very hard to maintain because the cut flowers didn't last long because this spot gets pelted with sun. So, you know, I'd get like a day or two out of them out here, and then they would start kind of petering out. Some flowers lasted longer than others, but you know, I kind of want something that's gonna just not necessarily be set and forget because I expect to take care of something, but I do just want something to look good almost all the time when I come down here, and this was a great solution. In this planter, I've got some pansies in stock. It's really starting to fill in now. The pansies that I have in here are frizzle pansies. I love them because I love those frilly petals, but I'm also really loving the stock this year. I did try growing stock from seed last year. Didn't really have the best experience with it, but I think it was too hot for them and they just didn't survive the summer. They definitely like cooler temps and they're really thriving now in like late April. So definitely one of those cooler season flowers to grow. So if you do decide to start it from seed, you might want to plan your season accordingly. Now these 3 beds here, I usually use for my cutting garden, and this year new, I planted spring flowering bulbs in September. I did daffodils and tulips there. I did all hyacinths over here. And then I did a full bed of all different kinds of tulips. It's going to be epic when it all blooms. I can't wait. It's all filling in. It's amazing. I did spray all of my tulips with deer repellent because I'm going to be really careful. I really want to see how it's all going to come out. Deer generally don't come in here. I have had rabbit problems before. Not so much deer in here. Rabbits, last year maybe even a groundhog, but this year with my family of foxes, hopefully I will not have that kind of problems. Don't get upset that I said that, please, but it's a circle of life. It just is what it is. So in this bed, I have a lot of different varieties of hyacinths. And what I did was, because I usually like to plant my snapdragons in here, I just planted them in between the hyacinths. So I've got quite a bit going on in here. I think I planted 5 different types of snapdragons in here. And then I think I'm gonna go around the edges with gomphrena when they're ready to be planted. Also have a fountain. Haven't started it up yet. I just don't feel like dealing with cleaning and refilling it and all that stuff. So right now it's more ornamental until we get to that point, but it'll get turned on soon. I'm probably going to be turning it on, actually probably this weekend. I'm hosting Easter and it'll be pretty to have on. Now you might be wondering why I have these green stakes here. They are permanently affixed to the beds, and that is because I use them for trellis netting. And I use trellis netting for my cut flowers because a lot of them get really tall, the blooms get really heavy, and I need a way to support them. And I've found that the best way to support them is using trellis netting. Now I have used like the tomato cages, peony supports, and I've used other things like randomly in my garden, but in here, this works so much better. You can usually find like maybe it's like a 5 by 30 foot trellis netting, and I just cut it down to size. The first year I did this, I just used green garden stakes, and it was just too weak. Much better with the stakes permanently affixed. My husband just did like 1x1s in here for me, and we painted them green so they would just kind of like disappear. I did use, the first year I used 1 layer, and that just wasn't enough. So I actually do 2 layers of trellis netting, and I found that that works the best with keeping my flowers upright. Now I haven't added the netting yet. I will, because I'll start doing them all at once. Once I have the beds planted up with my cut flowers, so like this bed is done, I'm gonna do that one next. And then I will actually do this one. I usually grow all of my dahlias in here, and it's looking a little tight. I gotta be honest with you. It's a little tight here with all these tulips, but my plan was, and still is, I'm gonna plant in between the tulips. If I need to move a tulip or two to fit my dahlia tubers, I'll do it. I don't think I'm gonna have to do all that much. I think I'll still be able to fit them in between some of these bulbs, but if I can't, I'm not too upset about moving some of them so that I can get my dahlia tubers in the ground. They will be getting planted probably in the next, I'll probably do it sometime after Easter. I'm watching the weather. It's still been a little bit cold here, so it's really not ready to go yet. Maybe I'll do it. I probably won't do it this week. I might do it the following week. And finally, the last bed, which I have to say, this bed is one that I really was ignoring. And I'm really gonna try to pay more attention to how it looks this year. But it is almost still like a catch-all garden for me. But I do have Brussels sprouts growing in here that I started from winter sowing, broccoli, I've got some more cilantro over here. I do have a lone scallion over there. I should probably move him over to the other bed. I do have some statice in here. I've got my sweet peas going up this trellis. I've got like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 over here. I've got rosemary, parsley, some stock, some nemesia. I'll be moving some things around, but one of the cool things that I'm growing in this garden this year is artichokes. I am growing artichokes for the first time. I started them from seed using the winter sowing method. They grew, they're doing great, and so I'm really thrilled about it. As a matter of fact, there's one right there. And then finally we have this side of the bed. This does get quite a bit of sun as well. I did a row of pansies over here. I've got my roses, I think they're Oh So Easies, and then I've got Atlas along the back of the fence line over there. I do have alliums growing all along here and there. Last year I planted asparagus. I bought like 6 asparagus plants from the farm at Green Village. I planted them, and this year I actually am growing asparagus. I'm so excited. I've never grown it before, so I'm really thrilled that I am actually growing it. I'll be able to cook it. I got to snap a few off. I did also just plant here purple passion asparagus all along in here, so it'll be planted in and interspersed among some of these flowers. I'm sure I'm not going to get any spears of that this year. I did plant bare roots, but I'm just super excited about growing it. Like I said, I'm really new to growing asparagus, and you know, it's all just an experiment, and I'm excited to grow it. Have you grown asparagus before? If so, give me your best tips. So if these are my first year, I know you have to wait a few years to harvest them. So if I planted the full plant last year, can we cut and eat them this year? For some reason, I'm thinking we can't, but I don't know. Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. So because I don't see the mom fox out here anymore and the babies are inside or they're outside doing something, let's talk a little bit about this garden, because last year I planted it up with a bunch of proven winners. Perennials, I've got different grasses in here, daylilies, salvias, sedums, like I planted so much. On this side of the bed over here, I've got some phylactrum, dark side of the moon, astilbes. I love the foliage on that one, and the blooms are so pretty. I've got along the back fence, I've got a couple blueberries and some raspberries. I'll probably have to move things around once things start really filling in and getting too big, but for the time being, we're okay. I've got some heucheras in here, planted a bunch of hyacinths and Globemaster alliums, a bunch of daffodils, and I kind of wanted to get a border going, but as spring hit, like I mentioned earlier, I've got that nice little patch of daffodils down there and they're white. So I really think I want to start pulling that up. So I think come next year, I'm going to start planting patches of white daffodils so that I can really start to fill this garden. Now, I don't know if you remember, but this bed this time last year was filled with liriope, and the soil was terrible. It was terrible. Oh, it was so bad. So the fact that a lot of these perennials came back, I'm super thrilled. We are mulching early next week, so this bed will look a lot cleaner hopefully next week. We do have to be careful around her. I'm not even sure if we're gonna do the whole bed or if I'm just gonna like leave a pile and wait until she moves on. That's probably the best course of action. I don't want to scare her. And I don't want the babies to be alarmed either. So I don't know, maybe we won't even mulch this bed. Anyway, I better think about that offline. But we are gonna be mulching next week nonetheless. And part of the reason I want to do that sooner than later in this garden is because every time it rains, all of that great compost gets washed down. So I really want that that mulch to help weight it down. So I'm gonna have to really think about that, because with that family of foxes under there, I don't want to disturb them. And so we're gonna have to wait. I think we're gonna have to wait on this one, on this particular bed. But you know what I would love to do in this garden? I would love to add a window box over there. It's not something that I will do this year, but maybe at some point I'll do it. It's going to be interesting to see this bed start to come together, because I kind of had a vision of it being a mixed border. It is by the cottage, so I do kind of call it the cottage garden. There's a whole ton of flowers in here, a lot of pollinator friendly plants, but I can't wait to see this year too. I mean, I planted it last year with some pretty mature plants, so we'll see how they do. And that's it, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me in the gardens today. I hope you enjoyed today's tour. I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy a beautiful day.